Okay, welcome, guys. I can see so we've got some people coming in already. If you want to share where you're coming in from, that would be great. We'll kind of play the contest of who's coming in from furthest away. So it looks like we've got Barb from San Francisco, Tom. Tom's from Houston. We've got Phil from Phoenix, it looks like. Um, Alan from Portland. Where's Liz coming in from? Liz is coming in from Minneapolis. And we've got another Dave coming in from Puerto Rico. So people are coming in from all over the place. So let's get rolling here. So first of all, my name is Dave G, and I'd like to welcome you to the Entrepreneurship Educators Association Speaker Series. Yes, we know that that is a very long title, but we are a relatively new organization, so we're trying to describe what we are so that people understand what we do. So we're very fortunate to have a guest today, Dr. Choton Basu. He's a friend of mine, and he's an expert in social entrepreneurship. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and not just social entrepreneurship as a concept. We're actually going to be talking about a specific project that Choton and his students at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater worked on to address blindness in rural India. So without further ado, Choton, if you could provide a little bit of an introduction about yourself and your background, and then we'll dive in.
Sure. As Dave said, my name is Choton Basu. I'm originally from India, Calcutta. For those of you who like to know where in India I'm from, I've been at Whitewater for about 23 years. I teach in the IT supply chain management department, but my specialty is international business and entrepreneurship. And over the years, I've focused my attention in social entrepreneurship, particularly the last 12 to 15 years. So that's been in kind of, I guess, a through line for me. So that's kind of my quick background. I specialize in technology. So I work on projects that have technology bent to it, but I also work on projects that are just using maybe technology to some degree, but have other implications like water filtration and things like that. So environmental impact or social impact. Those things are close to my heart. And I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, this is awesome. So let's start out by talking a little bit about social entrepreneurship in the context of students. And let's start at college students. Obviously, we're going to be talking about high school students as well, but talk a little bit about Enactus and what Enactus is.
Sure. So I just want to kind of share this. This might be kind of funny that all of people, everybody will be able to relate to. And Dave, you and I have talked about this before, that when you teach an entrepreneurship course, if you give the students an index card and say, tell me if you could, have resources and start a company or start something, what would it be? Correct.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you typically get restaurants, some kind of a food thing,
Coffee
sports
shops.
thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Coffee shops,
Mm-hmm.
sports thing, and so on. But one through line that we have started to see over the last, I would say 10, 15 years, that they're getting much more vocal about, you see this probably in your students, if you're an educator, is the social impact.
Mm-hmm.
They want to have meaning. They want to live a life that's purpose driven. So you
Right.
see a lot of conversation about social. It is difficult for them to kind of make the leap from, okay, I want to do this. I'm very
Right.
passionate about it, but then how do I do this? And I
Mm-hmm.
think I would say over the last, again, the 8 to 10 years, what we are starting to see this momentum where social entrepreneurship, social impact is starting to become quite cool and mainstream.
Right.
So it's not tree huggers anymore. It's
Right.
much more than
Mm-hmm.
that, right?
Right.
So what we have seen and what you see with the students now is they're beginning to understand that you can marry all the things that you learn in business and
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurship and the principles and your other courses, whether it's
Right.
communication, video creation, you can do all of that and then marry it to your social interest and your passionate interest.
Right.
So if you give that, I challenge you as an option to students and say, would you work for a brand or a company like that?
Mm-hmm.
It is ding, 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 number one.
Right.
Correct. So that trend is very clear.
So tell us about what Enactus is in like a couple of minutes.
Correct. So Enactus stands for Entrepreneurial Action Us. It used to be called Students in Free Enterprise, SIFE.
Hmm.
It's been around for
Hmm.
a pretty long time. They went
Yep.
through a rebranding. But what Enactus does, in short, is it enables students, it gives them a platform to work on experiential projects, social impact projects, which
Right.
balance people, planet, profit. So
Hmm.
social, environmental, economic, correct? So that's the other
Hmm.
way to look at it. And they have to work on it. It's not just ideation. They work
Hmm.
on that, then they present at a regional competition, then they go to a national competition, and in United States, they crown a champion.
Yep.
And this happens with 35 other countries. There's 72,000 students in Enactus across the world. And then they have a World Cup championship of the top teams across the world. So they just finished, and you mentioned there was somebody from Puerto Rico. They just finished the World Cup in Puerto Rico
Hmm.
last week.
Right. Okay, so Chotan's sometimes modest, but now we're going to kind of connect all these elements together. So, talked about Chotan's background, the fact that he's from India, talked about the fact that he's passionate about social entrepreneurship, we talked about Enactus. What we'd really like to hear about now is Aadya,
Sure.
and I'm going to bring up or combat blindness, so you can kind of talk a little bit about them as well. So, tell us
Sure.
about Aadya and the power of this program, what's happened.
Sure. Let me just take a minute to kind of set the context. So
Sure.
we have been an Enactus chapter at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater for about 12 to 13 years now,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
And our initial thing was baby steps. We were not a strong team. We were
Mhm.
learning as we went along, but it's a great community. They helped us along. They gave us
Sure.
support to keep moving forward.
Mhm.
And our goal, we started getting close as our projects got better, and I began to understand how to coach the students better. What began to happen is we started kind of getting pretty close to the top 16. The top 16 was still a dominant set of universities
Mhm.
that were doing extraordinary projects,
Sure.
correct? And
Mhm.
we could not break into that. But something interesting happened. Two things that happened. I think that I think Dave, you asked me this question to lead up to this.
Mhm.
Is we started collaborating with some very awesome organizations that were doing really kind of breakthrough work, like
Right.
Combat Blindness.
Mhm.
Combat Blindness is Madison based. They have been involved again for a long time to fight
Madison,
issues.
Wisconsin, just for those
Correct.
of the viewers that
Wisconsin.
are coming in from
Correct.
different parts of the
So
world.
we started partnering with them, and our main proposal to them was: you're a nonprofit. The future of nonprofits, we believe,
Mhm.
will start to migrate to the social impact, social entrepreneurship side, where you're not just raising money, but you're getting involved in the business model.
Right.
And they said, all right, let's try this out. And they helped incubate a project called Aadya.
Right.
Our first project, we originally called it Shakti, so you might see the name Shakti, but it is called Aadya. We had to go through a name change. And it was focused in two places in India, remote places and villages where people did not have access to vision and eye health.
Mhm.
But our key was to come up with a business model, again, using business
Right.
principles to have a social economic impact, but then create a sustainable business model so that when we leave from this project in 2, 3, 4 years, that it can run on its own. That's the
Right.
key, right?
Okay.
So
Mhm.
what we ended up doing is to design a solution which empowered women. And if you go to this website, you'll find it talks about that. And we started taking young women from the villages in India, training them with using technology like mobile devices
Mhm.
with software on it to go door to door and do vision cleaning, vision screening.
Mhm.
Once we
Mhm.
did that, people who needed eyeglasses, we sold them eyeglasses, which created a
Gotcha.
revenue for the
Mhm.
seniors. And the people who needed eye surgeries, had more severe things. We partnered with a local charity hospital called Shroff Charity Eye Care Hospital,
Mhm.
very well known in northern India.
Mhm.
And we
Mhm.
started referring them to those people, and they did eye surgery. We gave back eyesight to people,
Mhm.
and we ended up creating revenue again for the screeners.
Gotcha.
So it took a little bit longer time, but that's
Yep.
the ecosystem we created for social entrepreneurship, and Enactus at UW Whitewater led that. 2 years ago, we launched the project and we became the United States champions, which was unheard of because we couldn't make it to the top 16.
Mhm.
We went from, basically kind of watching all the top teams to suddenly being the top team in the
Right.
United States. We went up against the rest of the world. We did okay in the global competition, but again, you're seeing the best teams. It was an
Right.
amazing experience. And since then, our students are so motivated that they are bringing amazing projects. And I know, Dave, they invited you to be an advisor on the team
Mhm.
now
Mhm.
because you bring another perfect view, and not just, it's not biased from my viewpoint.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's where we are with Enactus. It is student based. They're doing amazing things. As of now, we have done over 250,000 screenings,
Amazing.
as of last couple of weeks.
Amazing. So talk a little bit about, and the name of the project is Aadya, and
Correct.
that they can learn more on the Enactus website. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So tell us about, yeah, the long-term impact. Well, let me kind of take two tacks. So where do you see actually Aadya going from here? Obviously, you and the students and the team over there have accomplished amazing things. Where's it going to go next?
Three directions. The first one is it will be expanding. So right now we're in northern India, so we will
Mhm.
expand the program and replicate it, as because we've learned a lot in the last
Right.
2 years. So
Mhm.
we will be replicating that. The second thing that will happen is a new social B Corp, a benefit corp, will be launched in US and in India,
Gotcha.
so that you can then have a organization
Right.
under which these programs can run, and we can experiment, incubate even more, and expand
Right.
the programs. And the last thing that'll happen is we'll expand into other countries. We're already under conversation with Kenya, where we
Wow.
realize, because through
Mhm.
combat blindness, we realize that the model will have to be different. A door
Right.
to door strategy will not work there. We
Right.
already know that we will have to centralize through churches and stuff, where
Sure.
people will
Sure.
come and we'll do the screening. So the beauty of it is what the students are learning. And this is what I know you and I are so passionate about, and some of your
Right.
educators who are part of this association are about, is really, enabling students to see this and understand these models and how to change them based on circumstance, so they can take this to the future and
Right.
create the next generation of companies. That
So
is the ultimate goal.
let's kind of, I want to hit on one element and then come back to dovetail off what you just talked about. Can you explain a B Corp? Because it's a relatively new phenomenon, and some of
Sure.
our audience might not understand. Actually, I'd like you to talk about two things: a B Corp, and then talk about what a social enterprise is, because there's some misconceptions about those relative to nonprofits. And I just like to kind of, yeah, if you could share your insights with that, that'd be great.
So what I'll do is I have a great graphic that I'll share with you later on, that you can
Sure,
post
you
to
put that
your,
in the notes.
to your community, so people can find that.
Yep.
So see the two spectrums. But the easiest way to understand is there's a lot of companies that are now adding that social component,
Mhm.
as a B Corp. And I
Yep.
think there's some rules that are different from the ones that are in California
Mhm.
and the
Mhm.
rest of the country. But
Yep.
essentially, you can add a benefit component to it.
Right.
And the idea there is, and the reason why this has become such a big deal, is that your, board and shareholders are not upset that you've added a social component. So they have to go through a process to show that we are benefiting society.
Right.
Correct. So
Mhm.
that's where it initially started. But the social enterprise from day one are trying to have that social impact. It doesn't stop them from making profit. Correct.
Right. And that's a really important point.
Yes.
I want you to, like, just nail that, because
Yeah.
this is where your people, planet, profits come in. So
Yes.
let's hit this really hard.
Correct,
So,
correct. And probably the easiest way to do this, and that's why the graphic I'll give you totally
yep.
explain it
Sure.
to you, is
Yep.
if you think of the bookend, one bookend being nonprofits, right?
Right.
And this was the conversation we had with Combat Blindness, is we kept telling them that, look, every year you're raising money to do amazing things across the
Mhm.
world, right?
Right.
But if you can start to get involved in a process where it's a social enterprise type of a setup, where you are generating your own profit,
Mhm.
then you become sustainable. You are not dependent on fundraising every year. So,
Right.
can we create that for you? Correct.
Mhm. Mhm.
Obviously, they realize that if you want to stay true nonprofit, and that's why we are spinning off that social enterprise, to
Mhm.
your point, that can handle the profits, make the profits. You can even have investors, but the
Right.
investors have to understand that you are going in with a social, impact,
Right.
point of view, and they may have to defer, getting paid back and stuff,
Right.
5 6 years. But yes, you can absolutely make profit, and you can jump through that. Patagonia is a perfect example of one of
Mhm.
these companies. Correct.
Mhm. Yep.
Incredible brand, incredible stuff they do, but they're highly profitable.
Right. Right. So, last thing I want to do is before we can talk briefly about Planet Pitch and then get into
Yeah.
some questions. When you look at the students that are truly engaged with Aadya, well, let's talk about Aadya specifically. How have those students changed? Like, and what, what sort of trajectory differences do you possibly see with a student that was involved in a project like that versus, there's no such thing as a typical student, but a student, let's just say, that was not involved.
Right, right. So, the best way I explain this, Dave, is that again, let's go back to people, planet, profit. So,
Hmm.
if you say that, if think of it as a triangle, the first point was profit. You're a business
Right.
student, if you're talking about revenue and stuff. What I see is for the students who get involved in this, that rotates and it suddenly becomes people. The social
Mm-hmm.
aspect suddenly becomes leading stuff. It doesn't mean that you're not going to apply the business principles. It
Right.
doesn't mean that you're not striving for profit or sustainability, which is the big
Hmm.
deal.
Hmm.
But the social stuff starts to happen. And by the way, it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, I've
Right.
seen students who've been involved with Aadya and the light bulb goes off a year and a half later.
Okay.
Right? It
Yeah.
doesn't happen that first moment, right?
Hmm.
They know they're doing something good, but it still just feels like it's doing something good. But the ultimate realization, to be the ultimate social entrepreneurs, are people who begin to realize the skill set that I'm learning as a business student, as a graphics person, as a communication student, social justice student, or whichever major you are.
Hmm.
Once they begin to realize that you can use those skills to create these kind of businesses and you can have an impact that is positive, right,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
make money while doing it, it completely, that's the moment they get transformed. And
Right.
that transformation, what I see is then they can't stop talking about it, and you
Right.
start to see them reaching out and finding resources, making network connections. Their entire life is, just the entire process of how they approach anything starts to change.
Right. Okay, let's take some questions. So I've got Max from Chicago. So Max's question, he says, I'm a teacher in Chicago, and we've talked about this at a college level. Can this sort of, he didn't say mindset, but he said, can this be done at the high school level? So are high school students, do they have the ability? Do they have the knowledge? Probably have
Yes.
the ability. Do they have the knowledge, or how can they acquire the knowledge to make initiatives like this happen at the high school level?
Done. The answer is resoundingly yes. I'll answer it in two buckets. The first one
Mhm.
is, what was the gentleman's name? Sorry.
That's Max.
Okay,
Yep.
Max.
Mhm.
So Max, I will tell you this: that every summer, my two of my colleagues and I, who are involved in Enactus, also different chapters, other universities, we run a 2 week workshop. We've done this for the last 2 years with students, high school students in Hong Kong,
Okay.
including freshmen, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
In 2 weeks, you can have them start to think about this and start to apply this. There's
Okay.
lots of tools available, and Dave started to make is trying to make a lot of those available. I'll try
Mhm.
to actually start to share some of those if
Sure.
that's helpful to you. So
Yep.
the answer is resoundingly yes. I've seen the results, and honestly, I find high school students to be absolutely amazing because they're still very open minded about a lot of things. So if you can show them that they can work on it, right?
Right.
And there's
Mhm.
ways to make progress, you will see the results. We have in Hong Kong literally had the students go through 2 weeks and have their teachers who they work with show up right at the end when they're pitching. And
Wow.
the teachers actually send us messages saying, I don't know how this happened. And our
Right.
response is, it's because of the students. They actually get it. You just have to provide them the opportunity and the platform. Let them make mistakes. They are not going to get it right the first time, but if you start giving them the tools so
Right.
they can organize their thinking, that's what works. One last thing I want to mention here with high school students: the first step that we spend time with them is an inward journey. We try to help them understand the
Mhm.
first two sessions, and we have this thing called pilot your purpose. We have this thing called life map. We
Mhm.
try to get them to share their personal things. You have to make it about them first so
Right.
they can go inward before they come out and talk
Right.
about what is exciting to them.
Okay, cool. So we got another question from Elizabeth that's coming in from Manhattan. I'm not sure if that's Kansas or New York. It is New York. And her question is this. So, from an employer's standpoint, let's say an employer could be actually, hiring a student out of high school or out of college. How students that have been engaged in social
Sure.
entrepreneurship, how are those future employees different from students that have not engaged in social
Great.
entrepreneurship?
Great question. I've been asked this one before, so I do have a ready
Mhm.
answer. Let me break it up into, again, two parts. The first part is this: the skills that the students learn in social entrepreneurship, it far exceeds in many cases, because they're passionate about it, they're
Right.
actually applying it. So
Mhm.
simple things like project management, working in a team, communication, following through, right? A lot of the things that you would want to see in a future employer or
Mhm.
even among students,
Right.
that is already happening and particularly they're driven, right? Because
Right.
it's the passion. The second thing which begins to happen is, because you're working in social entrepreneurship, you have to be even more creative, even more innovative, because you're working with limited resources,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
So it challenges them even more. So I would argue that the students that go through this kind of a process actually are ahead of the game
Right.
because of that.
Right.
And by the way, one last thing that you should tackle and watch is, if you look at the United Nations 17 and the
Mhm.
big push now from large companies to address the issue of people, planet, profit,
Right.
they are looking for students like this.
Right.
They are looking for, so like the Enactus students, we've got companies in Enactus that the first criteria in their resume when their HR departments come to Enactus competitions, the
Mhm.
first criteria is, were you a part of Enactus?
Oh, wow.
Moves them to the
Yeah.
top
Right.
instantly.
Yeah.
So similarly,
Right.
if you can show that you were part of an engaging journey like this, a
Right.
lot of employers know that those students are driven by something else.
Right.
All right.
All right. That's awesome. We're going to wrap up here because we always commit to try and be done in under 25 minutes. So I do
Yep.
want to talk a little bit about Planet Pitch. So
Yes.
I've been working on this for the last few months. Choton's been helping out and advising us. We've got a team from Harvard working with us. We've got an intern from Los Angeles. We've got another white guy, Steve, that runs the Illinois Math and Science Academy. So we've brought quite a team of people together. And what we're rolling out in May is a international social high school social entrepreneurship pitch competition. So that's a mouthful. So basically, if you think about an entrepreneurship pitch competition, but what students will be doing is addressing a specific challenge. It could be an issue with, for example, water, lead in the water in a specific community. It could be an issue related to food deserts in a major metropolitan area. And then students will develop products and services, ideas, or it could be an existing business they're working on. And then they will apply. And you can see we've got the website right here, planetpitch.co. And the students can apply. And then if they get through to the finals, they can win scholarships and prizes and things like that. And we've actually even got a curriculum that's available to the students or their teachers to actually teach them about entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship as well. And Choton's actually a part of that. So we're really excited about that. Um, and then the last thing that I want to just let everybody know about, if you're a high school teacher and you're either teaching entrepreneurship or you're running an incubator or an accelerator or any of those elements, highly recommend that you join the Entrepreneurship Educators Association. It is exclusively for high school teachers. You don't have to be an entrepreneurship teacher or business teacher, but engaged in entrepreneurship some way. You can go to myeea.org. We've also got a free Facebook group. We've got a YouTube channel and we've got a LinkedIn page. So we're just really excited about this. I think we connect with almost 400,000 students through their teachers throughout the world. That's just since January. Everything's free. And so we're just really excited to be, helping build future innovators and educators, innovators and entrepreneurs around the world to make the world a better place. And it wouldn't be possible without people like Choton. So, Choton, I want to thank you for your time.
But
And I'm sure we'll have you back on the show another time.
very good. Thanks,
All
Dave.
right. Thanks.